Hello, everybody. I just want to film an update video. I know I could have filmed it yesterday, but I get this really, really loud voice in my head that utters curse words, and it becomes very, very difficult to think clearly and to function normally. So I forgot about it, and so I just didn't get around to doing it yesterday. So now I am filming this video, and that is how it is going to be. Okay, so why I have been gone for a long, long time from YouTube, besides the fact that I filmed those other videos saying that I was done filming videos. Well, I've been gone because I've been in the hospital. And I'm going to get into some things in this video that are a little bit unpleasant, that are a little bit specific. So just forewarned, that is, there's going to be some unpleasant details in this video. So just a disclaimer right here and right now. I'm going to tell you the whole kind of the trajectory of how this whole thing evolved into what ended up me being in the hospital for 2 weeks from December the 28th through January the 16th. Well, this whole thing started literally on the first day of December. I went to the restroom and it was liquidy and it was watery. And I didn't end up going once or twice a day, but rather 3 to 4 times a day. And it was watery and liquidy. The stool was watery and liquidy. And so this ended up happening um, for, a good first half of December. I did go to the doctor around about the 5th of December. And he told me because of this, this diarrhea that I've been having when I go to the restroom, eat soft foods, mashed potatoes, applesauce, those kind of things like that. So then what ended up happening was that I shifted to the brat diet for like a day or 2 days, which included like Jello, applesauce, those kind of things like that. So I ended up doing that, but apparently I was eating the wrong foods. And so that leads us in to um, the middle half of December when I started noticing I was becoming very nauseous and I was vomiting a lot, feeling very, very unwell, feeling very, very nauseous. And so, one night I did throw up and it did look very, very dark. And the color of the vomit was suspicious. So I went to the hospital on December the 13th, very, very early in the morning. I ended up getting an IV put in my arm when I got there. Um, and I ended up in the emergency room in a triage bed, and then a doctor came by who wanted me to do a CAT scan to scan, um, where I was feeling in my body in regards to the constipation issue, in regards to the, going to the restroom issue. So I took one CAT scan. Then I ended up having to drink a concentrate, which I drank it. My body couldn't tolerate it because of the taste. I ended up, throwing it up. And so what it ended up happening was instead of just drinking the concentrate on its own, it was combined with some soda, some Sprite, and it was a little bit easier to get down. So I ended up taking the Sprite um, with the concentrate, and I could get it down enough to where I had the CAT scan, and I needed to go to the restroom. It was very, very uncomfortable because I have a bidet that I use at home to clean myself when I go to the restroom, so I don't have to use constant wipes. Um, so, and in the past, I'm going to tell you, it took me many, many minutes and many hours to sit there and wipe all the stuff up from when I, would go to the restroom. But now with the bidet, it happened at just the right time because the wiping was getting unsustainable. And so I'm so glad that I had the bidet. So I ended up sitting on the toilet while I was there and um, feeling very, very insecure. So eventually, when I would get home, I would sit on the bidet. So then the doctor came in after I did another CAT scan after having the concentrate. She cleared me. She said I could have whatever I wanted as long as it smelled like greasy fast food. All I wanted was a bottle of water, and that was mostly about it. On the way into the hospital, I did have some Jello, because I felt very, very, very nauseous, and so I sat in the cafeteria while my parents had lunch. I drank the bottle of water and maybe a little bit of soda that they got, which didn't seem to really bother me. I ended up picking up some medications. I ended up going home, although the weather was very, very bad that day, so we ended up having to wait just a little bit of time in order to go home. And so for, the good, after I got home, I went to the restroom. Um, my mom had to take a sample from when I went to the restroom, so she did that. But for the middle part of December, I was very, very sick. I was feeling very nauseous. I was having IBS. My stomach was hurting. I was in a little bit of pain, and I was just very, very lazy, sleeping a lot of the day. After going to the restroom, um, just feeling very, very nauseous, very, very unwell for the middle part of December from, I'd say, around about the 12th of December to the 19th precisely. I was feeling very, very nauseous, and I tried to calm myself through breathing, and um, it was very hard for me to digest food. All I really wanted was Italian ice, popsicles, um, you know, those kind of things appealed to me. Not much else appealed to me. Um, and so food really didn't appeal to me during the middle part of December. I went to the doctor around about the 19th of December, the 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 urgent care in town, and the doctor suggested that I shift to a diet where there's not a whole lot of spices in the cooking. There's not a whole lot of, fancy schmancy ingredients, where it was a bland diet. And so that ended up being false. The whole bland diet, brat diet thing was false because those are not the right foods for me. I'm going to get into the correction because of that later on in this video. Um, Then on the 20th, I suddenly woke up in the morning, didn't feel nauseous anymore, felt so much better. I started watching shows on Discovery Plus on the TV, cooking shows. I started getting into that. That interest just started right at that point. At first, cooking didn't appeal to me, but now I did, so I started watching all these cooking shows. Um, this was around December 21st. I could eat normal food. I could drink hot chocolate without throwing up. Um, and so that leads us right into Christmas, um, where I overindulge. First I was eating bland kind of foods, keeping it, but Christmas foods, you want to indulge at Christmas time. You want to, um, enjoy the food and that kind of thing. So what ended up happening was I was eating all the food, and my grandma and the dog that belonged to my grandma came over Christmas. I was eating all these foods, but I was feeling very, very unwell. I had just come down with fevers, and I was still very, very sick, and so I was tasting food, but it just didn't taste very good. It just didn't taste very delicious. And of course, my grandma was sitting at the table saying, "Oh, this is delicious." And I was like feeling left out, like, "Oh, I'm not tasting what you're tasting," because my taste buds are all out of whack. For Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and then the day after, that's when I really, really noticed it. And I tasted the food, but it just didn't taste normal. Like I couldn't taste normal. I couldn't taste as good. Of course, now I can taste things normally again. Things taste back to normal. But over that Christmas period, um, the food just didn't taste as good. On the 27th, and I got some gifts over Christmas, such as a book of spreads for my Oracle cards. Um, I got um, some albums. I'm trying to think what else I got. And so the 27th, I had fevers, combined with the whole going to the restroom issue, waiting for blood work results from when I had blood work at the clinic, waiting for the stool sample results to come in. So I was very, very unwell over Christmas. But thank goodness I had Christmas. I could have Christmas right before I got a cookbook. Um, I got several cookbooks actually. I'm not going to show them to you now. I got a cookbook called Natasha's Kitchen about a YouTube channel that I watch, called Natasha's Kitchen. She came out with a cookbook. I got that cookbook um on the 28th, which was the same day that I went back to the hospital. And this is where the plot thickens. So on the 28th, I had a fever. I was coming down with things, and I wanted to get this whole bowel going to the restroom issue figured out, get to the bottom of it. So I went to the hospital. I wasn't feeling nauseous or, sick or anything. I was feeling rather well that day, rather energetic in a, good enough mood, I guess you could say. I went to the hospital, got the IV put in my arm. They said they were going to do some testing. They said they were going to do those kind of things like that. And then we ended up waiting to get into the triage room, um, in the bed. And the wait, I can tell you right now, um, was incredibly, incredibly long. We ended up waiting 2, 3, 5 hours, I'd say, to get in there. Over that amount of time, I was going very, very impatient. Occasional doctor would check vitals once in a while. Um, and I ended up getting Discovery Plus on my computer. I ended up getting a couple things on my computer to watch during that amount of time. I ended up getting some soup, although I still wasn't tasting things properly. Um, so the soup didn't taste very good. It was like a vegetable soup. And maybe I got something else with it, but I can't remember. The weather was really, really bad. The snow was coming down that day very, very hard. So then after I had the soup, I waited a little bit of time and I was growing very, very impatient. And then I eventually did get into the emergency room. And so I got into bed. It was very, very uncomfortable to sit up with, but comfortable enough to lay down in an emergency room. Um, and what ended up happening was I ended up having a thing put on my finger that I had. I ended up having stuff taped to my chest. I got in a gown. Um, and so we ended up staying there overnight. My mom was there. She had to sleep between two chairs, which is very, very uncomfortable sleeping on one chair and then putting her legs up on another chair. She did get a little bit of sleep. I did get a little bit of sleep, surprisingly. The next day, what ended up happening, this was around the 29th of December. And I didn't end up staying in the triage for very long. Now the next day, what I do remember, besides watching the shows I had on my computer sitting up in bed to pass the time, I ended up taking a couple enemas to get the stuff out of my system, to get the stool out of my system, to just clear it out. Um, and of course, at that time, I met Dr. Hancock, which I knew for the first leg of the long journey of being in the hospital. And so I ended up getting it cleared out. I was very, very glad when I got it cleared out. I got enemas um, put in, um, and then there was a bedside commode that I had. I got on there and the stool came out, more solid. I was able to get it out twice because I had two of those. I felt a little bit better getting some of that stool out. Um, y- the day continued on. I don't really remember a whole lot of the details of what happened. I think later in the day or later the next day, I can't remember. Once bed got open, a a doctor uh came came by and said that your room is ready, your hospital room is ready. So they wheeled me up to the hospital room. The room, when I got there, it had a couch. Um, at one end of the wall, the view was very, very nice. There was windows. To the left side of the room, there was a sink. When you first entered the room, on the right was a restroom. There was a bed that I could, sit and lay upon that was very, very comfortable. And so, um, I basically started, um, a liquid diet from that point forward. I started having Italian ices, jellos, those kind of things like that. And then the next thing that I remember that I can describe was that Dr. Hancock needed to do a colonoscopy on me. Um, and so to short, because the size of my colon was very, very large, where I couldn't pass gas, and I still am struggling because of that. Going to the restroom is very, very difficult. So I ended up going in to get that colon down. And so then, between the very, very first days of January to about the 5th, the 6th, I was on a um a liquid diet, a clear liquid diet, and then a full liquid diet where I got to have tomato soup and those kind of things like that, which was good. And then in came another doctor whose name was Dr. Gibbs, and this is where they got it wrong because he was very, very jumpy, he was very, very quick, he was very premature because he suggested, oh, why don't you have some solid? And it's just been a couple of days that I've been on the clear liquid diet, immediately switching to the full liquid diet very, very quickly. And so, of course, I was thrilled at the idea because I wanted to get on solids. And so then, while all this was going on, I was watching shows on Discovery Plus, cooking shows. I was watching these kind of shows such as Ina Garten, Barefoot Contessa, Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, The Pioneer Woman, Farmhouse Rules, all these shows on Discovery Plus. So then I got on solids and I could basically have anything. I had the very first meal that I had was chicken noodle soup, which I felt very full after that meal. So I, I only had so much of it. I had the whole thing. I could eat the whole thing. But then I had um mac and cheese, like the full portion of mac and cheese, not a small portion of mac and cheese. And I ended up eating the whole thing because my mom kind of took the plate away because there was so much of it. Um, I had salmon with rice, which was gonna be a very, very good meal for me, so that wasn't the worst thing I could have. But then I also had in the morning for breakfast pancakes with high fructose corn syrup. And that's gonna be important later on in this whole train trajectory. Um, so I had the pancakes twice a day. And I should add in here that I was starting to have x-rays where I was going down in either in a wheelchair or a bed, going down to a room where I was having x-rays measuring out my stomach. And so it ended up taking several days. Around about the 5th of January, I was feeling well enough. That morning, however, I felt incredibly bloated, incredibly stretched out. I went into the x-ray with a really bad feeling, like something was just wrong here because my stomach was out several centimeters. I didn't remember the amount. I was feeling very, very bloated. My stomach was large, very kind of fat, I guess you could say. I just felt very extended and expanded and fat, and very uncomfortable. So, I took the X-ray, and then um, I um, I had breakfast. I had two pancakes. I can't remember what else that I had with that with syrup. And then along came Dr. Reyes, who did not make the best first impression, who was kind of, I would describe him as a kind of Asian doctor. Maybe he had Asian influence. Maybe his family was born in Asia. Maybe he had Asian heritage. Maybe he was a little bit French. I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of guessing at this stuff. He didn't make the best first impression because he came in, and I had a nurse whose name was Joyce, who was kind of African, I guess you would describe, who was there for the first leg of the whole um, journey of me going from liquids to solids, and she was very, very nice. I really, really liked her. But then she stopped. Another nurse came in. I don't remember her name. She was young with kind of blondish hair and American white in terms of race, that is. Um, so I had the pancakes. I watched my shows that morning, and Dr. Reyes came in saying, "Oh, you're about to go home today." And of course, that lifted my spirits, that raised my hope. I was so excited to go home. I was such in high spirits. This was before he took a look at the x-ray, but when he said all this, "You're going home, you're good, this is over, you can go home." And then later on that day, he came in and said, "Ooh, this is not looking so great." And so he described how the x-ray, I was out several centimeters and how I was very, very bloated. So he said, "We have to go in again. You're having another colonoscopy, and we have to shrink the colon. We have to decompress. We have to get some of the air out," which was what they should have fixed during the first colonoscopy, which I thought that they did. And maybe they did before I was put on the diet way too quickly. But I just thought it was just so unprofessional and just so wrong and so jumpy for Dr. Reyes to suddenly raise my hopes, and I was feeling so good. And then to come in before looking at the x-ray, come in and then tell me, oh, yeah, it's not looking so great. And so then I broke down. I lost it. I cried without tears because I couldn't get my eyes wet with tears. But I was very, very upset. I was very, very upset. This was around about January 5th, January 6th when this happened. So I was very, very upset. Um, I just wanted this resolved. I wanted this fixed. And I was like, I'm not going through this again. I can't believe this. Now, my mom, who was there in the hospital with me for the time being, had come down with the flu. So she had to leave the hospital, go home. And so my dad was there for a couple of days. And so my mom was home getting better when all of this happened. So I was supposed to be feeling so excited, so elated that I would be going home, but then I was going into another colonoscopy, going into a triage room just like the first one, um, getting all prepped and ready, going into the anesthesia room, going to sleep. Somehow I got to sleep, waking up in the anesthesia room, um, feeling better. The very, very first time that I did, I had a bag attached to my leg, but like a bag that I eventually would release through going to the restroom and eventually would come off. And I had a tube at my rear end on the very, very first time with Dr. Hancock, um, which was very, very uncomfortable. And I was trying to wipe, and when I would go to the restroom, it was very, very difficult because that tube was there. The second time, there was no tube, no bag, just because it would probably cause a perforation. And so they decided not to put that in there. And so the night of the 6th or the 5th, I can't remember, it was a Monday. So that would have been, I think, the 5th, if I were to guess. I couldn't have anything by mouth. I couldn't have water. I couldn't have jello. I couldn't have anything by mouth that night because I had just come out of the colonoscopy. I just came out of surgery. But I was very, very upset. I was very down and out and very um uh just just very distressed and frustrated that I had to do this the second time. This hospital stay was taking too long. I said I'm not going to do this again. If I have to do this again, this happens again, I don't care. I'm going home. I'm not going to go through this again. And I was like, I'm not going to even go through this again. And I want to go home and I want to be put back on solid foods. And so I remember walking around the hospital, walking around the the wing of the hospital with my dad. I started walking around the hospital to get exercise, um, complaining about this whole thing and how upset I was. Then I remember being just so in a bad mindset and just so tired of it all. I wasn't thinking clearly, so I wasn't supposed to have anything in my mouth, but I did have some sips of water. And before, when I was in the triage room, before all of this, I could have sips of water, but I couldn't, like, have the full extent of water, which I was very upset by. I couldn't have the amount of water that I really wanted. But that night of the 5th, I had um water um in multiple glugs of water. And I have some now. Whoops, I must have with this bottle. Yeah, I'm done with it now that I'm thinking that I'm having some water because I'm thirsty and I should be drinking more water now. So, anyway, um, I drank some water even though I was not supposed to. Um, and so I had an IV put in um my my right arm, and then I had an IV put on my left arm. And a detail that I completely forgot to leave out in this whole thing. Every single day I would feel this anxiety, I would feel this dread, I would feel this anticipation because they needed to poke me, they needed to um pinch me to get blood. Um they needed to do this to get blood. To check my blood work that it was okay. Um And so they were poking me so much, so quickly, so often, so close together, um, too much, too quickly, too close together. And my body was getting poked out. I was losing nutrition. I was losing strength. And so eventually they would poke me and it would be all for naught because they could get any blood out of my body. And so every single day I would wake up with this dread of getting poked. And so what ended up happening was the day of the sixth, which was Tuesday, that day I got back on clear liquids again. I could have water, I could have Italian ice, which I was getting kind of tired of the Italian ice. That's the first one since I had that so much. I could have Jello, I could have beef broth, chicken broth. Although I didn't really want those, because I didn't like them the first time, and I didn't really like those. And then in the middle of the day, um, I probably had a meeting with a uh, a psychologist online who was like, you're not thinking clearly, you need somebody else to help you think clearly. Um, you shouldn't leave before it's medically okay to leave. So she was talking through medications. Now, I should mention that another doctor came in when I was going through the first round of going from solids to liquids, saying I could have coffee. Like I was so surprised that I could have coffee. And so I said, can I have some real food? And so I remember her saying, no, that would be catastrophic. That's what I remember her saying, something along those lines. And so I could have coffee and I could have this kind of things like that. The coffee at the hospital was not very, very good. The taste of it was just off. I didn't really like it. Um, and so, yeah. Um, so, basically, um, I went through the whole clear liquid, full liquid, solids again, but this time it was much slower, much better planned out. I should mention that on that Tuesday, all of a sudden, out of the blue, I didn't expect this at all. A a doctor came into the room with a hairnet on, and she said, "We're going to attach another IV in you." And of course, I was very, very stressed. I was very anxious. And she said, "Let me explain." I heard her out, And she said, when we attach this IV in you, nobody will come in and poke you and pinch you anymore with the needles. When we put this IV in, they will simply draw blood out from a port. They will simply squeeze the blood and get it out. And so then I was on board with it. And so putting it in was definitely way easier than getting out, which I got it out yesterday, actually. So I sat up in the hospital bed. They end up raising it up. I put my right arm out because this one would go in my right arm, the left would go in my left arm. The other went in my left arm before that one. Um, and so the very, very worst part was a needle, feeling like a needle going into my arm, although I don't remember a whole lot of the details from it. But it was kind of a painful process to go through putting it in. It was kind of a lot, putting it in. Worst part was, putting it in. And then once it was in, things were a little bit easier from that point forward. The diet slowly progressed from that point. I was on um, liquids, clear liquids for a while. And then I was on full liquids all the while watching shows. And now I was branching out to watching shows. I was on Prime. I was watching cooking shows on PBS. I was watching cooking shows on the Roku channel. So I was getting all these different streaming platforms open on my computer to watch. And it's just so ironic that I was watching all these cooking shows because I was into cooking. I was developing an interest in cooking, but yet I couldn't have solid food. I couldn't have so many things because of my body and my colon being basically broken and basically unwell and abnormal. But that's what I wanted to watch. I was in the hospital. I didn't have much else to do. And so that's what I did. I sat and watched cooking shows. Sometimes I sat up in the bed, sometimes I sat up in a chair. Which I did the first go round of this whole thing. So, which the Dr. Hancock suggested that I do. So anyway, um, uh, it's sort of a series of different doctors coming at different times. So then I got on a TPN. It helped me with my nutrition, me feeling better. My feet were swelling up at this point in time. So they ended up wrapping my feet when I was walking in the hallway because I would walk 5 to 6 times a day to get my bowels moving. Sometimes I would sit down in the toilet to see if I could try to get gas out and try to go to the restroom after walking. I remember my feet coming out of my slippers because of the wraps they put on my feet. After a couple of days of that, though, they ended up taking the wraps off my feet because my feet and my legs were getting normal. I ended up being on a liquid diet and then a clear liquid diet for a very long time. And so, um, and so, yeah, their menu was just so limited because what I could have was a pureed chicken noodle soup was the only soup that was available on the menu to have. Sherbet, Jello, Italian ice like I had before. For breakfast, I could have cream of rice, cream of wheat, which was a little bit more gas producing. Jello, I mean, I can't remember what else at this point, so I'm not, I can't really remember. But I was on a clear liquid, full liquid diet for quite a long time and I was getting very, very sick and tired of it. Very sick and tired of the same foods. I was not excited to get the food. Um, that pureed soup really took a toll on me. I didn't have it all the time because I had it for lunch, and I had it for dinner again, because there was only so much to have, and I, I, I was on that full liquid diet for several days, and my body was just so sick of it by around the 12th, I would say, of January, or the 10th, or I mean, I don't even remember at this point the dates now. And then I switched back to solids again. And that was the point where my mental health got way, way, way better when I switched back to solids. This time, however, it was much slower. I was on a more restricted diet. I was eating smaller portions. GI doctors came in and said, eat small portions, a lot of different portions throughout the day. Um, Eating foods that were on a low FODMAP diet, um, which include foods that were not very gas producing and did not have a whole lot of fiber in them because fiber was, bad. I could have chili, I couldn't have, salad, certain salads, all those kind of foods. No. I think chickpeas, maybe they have a lot of fiber in them. Beans have a lot of fiber in them. I can't have those things now. So, sausage, not right now because of the fat in sausage. Um, so, uh, I got on solid foods again. And I remember being just so happy that I got on solid foods. I got mac and cheese the first go around that night. I got mashed potatoes and gravy. I can't remember which night this was. I honestly can't because I lost track of the dates when I was there. Um, I remember getting salmon with like a garlic, rosemary, flavoring. I'm glad they flavored the salmon like it wasn't just a piece of salmon and rice. That was another meal that I got. Another meal was grilled chicken and mashed potatoes and gravy, grilled chicken and rice. Very recently, before leaving, I got chicken tenders, which were like fried chicken with like barbecue sauce and rice. I ended up getting a lemonade, which ended up being, low, which ended up now being high fructose, which now at the very, very end of my hospital stages, I ended up drinking water with my meals instead of lemonade. For breakfast, during those several days that I was back on the solid diet, I got toast with jam, Rice Krispie treat, Rice Krispie cereal, slash English muffins with jam, and cornflakes with orange juice that I could have that was pulp free. And I should mention the medications that I was on. So I was taking Miralax, which is this, powdery stuff you stir in drinks. Um, Once a day, I was taking Senecot, which is like a bowel stimulator, twice a day. All my psych medications, plus a suppository, which is like a pill that the doctors just stick in my, rear end, and I have to completely relax in order for them to get it in. I was taking that twice a day. I'm still taking it at home. That hasn't changed. I'm still on all these medications now. So that, and then chewable pills to release gas. I ended up going to the restroom in the middle of the night, where I was connected to a TPN, a PIC line, a cord. My mom had to wake up in the middle of the night and get that out, drag me into the restroom, pull my gown up so that I would not get it dirty. And I remember there were several times when I could barely make it to the restroom because of the urge to go that I soiled my pants when I sat down in the restroom and peed my pants because I had to go so bad and I got in just barely in time. But generally my mental health got better when I was on the solid diet. I ended up still continuing to watch cooking shows. I still continued to walk around 6 times a day for those days that I was on the solid diet. In my mind, I had this thought of, I should say it, but I had this thought of, like, let's go stink walk. I had no idea why I had that thought. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't even mention it here. I don't know. That was just a little added thing that I was having. But anyway, um, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't even mention that. Um, but so I was watching a great variety of shows. I had those things to occupy me. And then around about the 15th and the 16th. Now, I should say another detail that I did not remember to mention is that Mayo Clinic got calls that I would be going over there to get this gas issue resolved. They would do some testing, they would do some, trials and error on me to get this whole issue resolved. And so we were waiting and waiting and waiting to get on an ambulance, to get on a thing to Mayo Clinic, but they didn't have beds available. They full to the brim with patients. Um, and so a GI doctor said it's really, really unlikely that you're going to ever get into Mayo. So let's discharge you. Just go home and come in as an outpatient, then go into the emergency room if anything gets worse up there at Mayo. And that's the quickest way to get in the door there. I'm going to probably be going to Mayo in February or March or whatever they get around to calling and whatever they get around to opening it up for me to go there. Um, so uh, basically, what ended up happening was we found out very, very recently that Mayo actually rejected me on the 6th of January when I was not doing so well. They rejected me because I was doing better at the hospital there, so they didn't need to have me because I wasn't sick enough to go there, which was a good thing since it would extend the hospital stay way further. If I had gone in May, I would still be stuck in hospital with, all that kind of thing. I wouldn't be home like I am now. So, um, uh, so they rejected me saying, you're doing fine, so we don't need you. Um, so they, uh, that didn't end up happening. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, I took 3 Senna instead of 2 Senna. I got off the TPN, meaning I was not connected to a line, which means I was free to walk around, go to the restroom if I needed to. Um, and I was on 3 Senna instead of 2 Senna. I ended up my schedule changed when it comes to going to the restroom. I went to the restroom in the afternoon yesterday, 2 days ago. Yesterday, I went to the restroom when I got home. Yesterday, I found out there was several doctors that said, get off the TP and you're doing very, very well with your diet. So then yesterday, that was the day that I got discharged from the hospital because I was doing very, very well. There was a whole process because of that. There was a virtual nurse that got on a Zoom call. And I did have several Zoom calls with a psych person, uh, talking about medications and things. So the whole experience, I did have repeated extras going into that room. But so anyway, um, the virtual nurse went over the instructions for the pills and medications. I got the port, the IV took out of my arm, which was way easier and way less painful than getting it put in my arm. Um, uh, and so then I got out of the hospital yesterday. I was feeling in the most high spirits I'd ever felt, not feeling nauseous, not feeling bloated really. I got out of the hospital yesterday, and this whole nightmare of an experience, this long extended stay of an experience was finally better. And I should say that compared to an experience I had back in December 2021, that was such a very, very difficult experience where I had a tube up my nose, where it was very, very uncomfortable, where um, I I wasn't passing tests, I wasn't passing school a whole lot of the time. Yet it was one go around. The experience didn't last very long, whereas I was more comfortable because I didn't have a tube up my nose in this experience. And it was more comfortable comparatively, and it was for an extended amount of time. I was in there for a long time, the 28th of December to the 16th of January. That's a long time. And I'm just so mad that it took two go arounds of the liquid diet, solid diet, going into colonoscopy again, doing it again, as opposed to just one go around where they did it right the first time. So I was upset at that. Um, I ended up getting a couple books the night before, library books, which I still have now, a couple. I ended up getting a low FODMAP cookbook, which I have now that I'm going to start using today. Um, and I was basically put on a low FODMAP, low fiber, low gas diet, which I'm on now. And so I got discharged from the hospital yesterday. I went home, did good voice. I was so glad to be home though. And so yesterday happened. And so here we are, back to today. So I know that was a very, very long, drawn out story, but on to the next part of the video, what is upcoming um, for for my YouTube channel now. Now, my interests have changed over the point in time that I've been in the hospital. I used to be very interested in spirituality. I used to be very interested I still am interested in oracle cards and astrology and things like that, but I've kind of lost interest in astrology. I will continue to make astrology videos on the planets through the different signs and weekly astrology videos. I will continue to do that. Just to stick with the commitment and because there's a small part of me that still wants to do this, so I'll honor that part of me and I'll still continue to make those videos. However, my interests have changed and now I'm interested in cooking, history, reading fiction. And so what is going to end up happening is I'm going to get into the kitchen, I'm going to start cooking, I'm going to get comfortable with the skills of cooking in the kitchen. And once I get comfortable enough, memorize the recipes, do all those things, once I get comfortable enough, I will want to do some cooking videos that I will publish to my YouTube channel, um, way later in the future. This time, and that's going to become way later in the future once I get comfortable making recipes and doing all that. This time, however, because I made back in like 2015, I made like a couple cooking videos. I was making fruit salad, prosciutto wrapped melon. I made root beer floats. I made barbecue sauce, tapenade, um, what, uh, cookies. Like I made several things, but the thing was I wasn't genuinely interested in cooking the recipes as I am now. I was more interested in, did I say the right things? Did I sound good? Was I descriptive enough? Did I talk in a very, very good way? The overall performance of me as opposed to what I'm doing now. I don't care about the performance and how good I sound or whatever. I care about what I'm cooking, the whole process of what I'm cooking, what I'm actually doing, and then getting to eat it afterward, and getting to describe, um, you know, the flavors and the textures of it after I'm done preparing it. Like I might say it's delicious, but then I might go into it and describe it. Um, they will be filmed by others that will film down on the table and when I'm talking, showing me talking, showing preparing things. So that'll come later as an addition to the um, astrology videos. Um, so that's what's going to be upcoming. Um, uh, in terms of just my life in general, I'm not taking classes at DMAC, which is community college this semester. Was withdrawn because of this whole thing. I'm going to be going back to work in a week from now, probably working 6 hours a week instead of 4 hours a week because I'm going to be having extra time, hopefully getting through things. And so basically that's it. That's all I can think to say in this video about what my experience was, why I've been gone, and what's upcoming on the channel. So I know this was a long video. Thank you for watching to the end if you're here at the end. Please hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss future uploads for me when I upload new videos. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss those videos. Yeah, more videos will be coming onto the channel very, very soon, so look out for those videos. And I will be back on Instagram. Um, be back, um, posting Instagram stories again, TikTok stories, making TikTok picture reels. So you'll see me on Instagram posting post stories and all those kinds of things. So I'll be posting on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok again. So yeah, I'll be posting on social media again from this point forward. So thank you everybody for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.